Welcome back, fellow travelers. Before we step onto the old dirt roads tonight, I want to take a moment to simply say thank you. Thank you for resting here with me. If you find comfort and peace in these quiet journeys through time, please kindly consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It is a small gesture, but it truly helps our little community grow. And if you would like to help even more, to keep the campfire burning and the history flowing, you can leave a tip at koafi.com/history-to-relax. Your support means the world to me. Now, let us leave the modern world behind. Let the light of your screen fade from your mind. Let the noise of traffic, of messages, of endless rushing dissolve into nothing. You are no longer where you were a moment ago. You are somewhere much older, somewhere much slower. It is the space just before dawn. That fragile, quiet time when the night is still holding on, but the sun is making promises just over the edge of the world. You are lying on a simple bed. The mattress is stuffed with dried straw and sweet-smelling herbs. It is not the softest bed you have ever known, but after the miles you have already walked, it feels like a cloud spun from pure comfort. A heavy wool blanket is pulled up to your chin. It is rough against your skin, a little scratchy, but it holds the warmth of your body perfectly against the cold morning air. And it is cold. You can feel a slight chill on the tip of your nose. The only part of you brave enough to peek out from under the covers. You do not open your eyes yet, you just listen. The inn around you is an old wooden beast, and like all old beasts, it breathes. You hear the slow, settling groan of a timber beam somewhere above you. You hear the wind brushing past the wooden shutters of your small window. Downstairs, beneath the floorboards, there is a very faint sound. It is the innkeeper, waking the hearth back to life. The soft clink of an iron poker against stone. The gentle crackle as dry kindling catches fire. It is a comforting sound. It means the world is still here. Slowly, you let your eyes flutter open. The room is painted in shades of deep blue and dark grey. There is no bright lamp to shock your senses, just the slow, natural shifting of shadows. You take a deep breath. The air smells of old wood, of extinguished candles, of a faint memory of roasted meat from last night's dinner, and of damp earth from outside. Today is the day. You let out a long sigh, tossing the heavy blanket aside. The cool air rushes over you, waking your senses immediately. You sit on the edge of the bed. Your feet find the wooden floor. The boards are cold and smooth, polished by thousands of travelers who have sat exactly where you are sitting now. Who were they, you wonder? Merchants carrying spices from the east? Knights returning home with heavy hearts? Or simply wanderers, like you, drawn by the invisible pull of the great spire? It doesn't matter now. This morning, the room belongs to you. You reach down and pick up your boots. Ah, boots. The most loyal, and sometimes the most treacherous friends a traveler can have. The leather is stiff from the cold night. You have to work your feet into them, wiggling your toes to find the familiar grooves you've worn into the soles. You pull the leather laces tight, tying them with practiced automatic motions. With your boots on, you are no longer just a person in a room. You are a traveler again. You stand up, stretching your arms above your head. Your joints pop slightly, a little protest against the morning, but your muscles feel strong. You walk over to the small square window and push open the wooden shutters. The morning air hits your face, sharp and clean and wet with dew. The village below is entirely asleep. Roofs made of thatched straw look like sleeping animals huddled together against the cold. A thick white mist rolls slowly through the narrow dirt streets, hiding the doorways and wrapping around the wooden fences. Far in the distance, beyond the village, beyond the dark outline of the forest, the sky is turning a pale, bruised purple. That is where you are going. Toward the east, toward the spire. You turn back to the room to gather your things. There is a deep, profound satisfaction in packing a traveler's bag. You do not own much, and that is a beautiful freedom. You fold your spare linen shirt, placing it at the bottom. Next goes a small pouch of salt. Then, a thick round loaf of dark crusty bread you bought from the baker yesterday. It is hard enough to knock on, but it will keep for days. Beside it, you nestle a block of yellow cheese wrapped in a waxy cloth, and a slightly bruised apple that still smells wonderfully sweet. Finally, your wooden cup, carved from ash wood, worn smooth by your own hands. You pull the leather drawstrings tight. The bag is light. Your burden is easy. You drape your heavy woolen cloak over your shoulders, securing the iron clasp at your throat. It is time to go. You open the door to your room and step out into the narrow hallway. The wooden stairs creak loudly under your boots. You try to walk softly, but an old inn keeps no secrets. Down in the main room, the fire is blazing now, casting dancing orange shadows against the plaster walls. The innkeeper is there, a large, quiet man with flour on his apron. He does not speak. He simply looks at you, nods slowly, and pushes a warm cup of herbal tea across the wooden table toward you, a silent blessing for the road. You wrap your hands around the clay mug, letting the heat soak into your cold fingers. The tea tastes of mint and earth. You drink it slowly, standing by the fire, letting the warmth fill your chest. When you are finished, you set the cup down with a soft thud. You pull open the heavy oak door of the inn. The cold morning rushes in to meet you. You step outside, pulling the door shut behind you. The latch clicks. You are out in the world now. The dirt road through the village is frozen hard. Your footsteps crunch loudly. Crunch. Crunch. A stray dog, sleeping under a wooden cart, opens one eye to look at you, decides you're not a threat, and goes back to sleep. You walk past the blacksmith's forge, cold and dark. You walk past the small stone, well in the center of the square. And then, you reach the edge of the village. There are no walls here, just the place where the houses end, and the wild road begins. The mist is thick among the trees, hiding the path ahead. But you know the way. You simply have to put one foot in front of the other. The sun is finally breaking over the horizon. The journey has begun. Breathe deeply and walk with me. The sun is fully over the horizon now, casting long, pale shadows across the frozen dirt. The edge of the village is behind you, and before you lies the edge of the great forest. This is where the open sky ends and the canopy begins. You take a deep breath of the morning air. It is different here. The smell of wood smoke and damp straw is gone, replaced by the sharp, ancient scent of pine needles and wet bark. You step onto the path that leads into the trees. It is not a modern road, wide and paved. It is a hollow road, a sunken path, carved deep into the earth by the passage of countless feet, hooves and wooden wheels over hundreds of years. As you walk down into the hollow, the banks rise up on either side of you, taller than your head. The earth walls are covered in dark green moss and thick, tangled roots that look like the grasping fingers of the old trees above. Walking here feels like walking through a trench, or perhaps a very long open grave. It is a place that feels deeply, silently old. The noise of the morning wind is suddenly cut off, blocked by the earthen walls. The silence is heavy. The only sound is the rhythmic crunch of your boots on the hard-packed dirt. Crunch, crunch. It is a comforting rhythm. It is the heartbeat of the journey. You run your hand along the wall of the hollow road as you walk. The soil is cold and damp. You can feel the history trapped in the layers of dirt. You think about the people who walked this exact path centuries before you. The Roman legions marching in tight formation, their armor clanking against the silence. The medieval merchants, their carts groaning under the weight of wool and spices, hoping to reach the next town before nightfall. The weary pilgrims, walking with heads bowed, murmuring prayers to keep the shadows at bay. Every one of them stepped where you are stepping now. Every one of them helped to carve this road just a fraction of an inch deeper into the earth. You are walking in the literal footsteps of ghosts, but they are peaceful ghosts. The light down in the hollow is strange and dim, even though it is morning. The trees above reach across the gap, their branches intertwining to form a natural roof of dark wood and sparse winter leaves. The sunlight filters through in thin, dusty beams, illuminating small patches of the path, like spotlights on a dark stage. You walk through one of these beams. The sudden warmth on your face is a pleasant surprise. It lasts only a second before you plunge back into the cool, mossy shadows. The road twists and turns, following the natural contours of the land. You never know what is around the next bend. Perhaps a fallen tree, perhaps a deer, startled from its morning drink, or perhaps nothing at all, just more of the endless sunken path. You shift the weight of your bag on your shoulder. The thick bread and block of cheese feel heavy now, a solid reminder of your preparation. You are not hungry yet, but the knowledge that you have food brings a deep sense of security. A traveler with a full bag is a traveler who can afford to walk slowly. You look down at your boots, watching them move forward, one after the other. Left, right, left, right. The leather is already dusted with a fine layer of pale, dry dirt. It is a mark of progress. You are becoming part of the road, just as the road is becoming part of you. Suddenly, the hollow road widens slightly, opening into a small, natural clearing, surrounded by the high earthen banks. In the center of the clearing sits a large, flat stone. It is covered in a soft layer of pale green lichen. It looks suspiciously like a bench, perfectly placed for a weary traveler. And so you stop. You slide the bag from your shoulder and let it rest against the base of the stone. You sit down. The cold of the stone seeps through your cloak, but it feels good. It grounds you. You rest your elbows on your knees and simply stare down the path ahead. The silence is absolute. You close your eyes for just a moment. The journey has barely begun, yet you already feel 1,000,000 miles away from the inn, the village, and the world you left behind. You open your eyes. The brief rest on the moss-covered stone has done its job. The slight ache in your calves has faded, replaced by a quiet readiness to move again. You push yourself up, feeling the cold air rush in, where your cloak had gathered warmth against the rock. You pick up your bag, settling the strap over your shoulder, and step back onto the hollow road. But the path is changing now. The high earthen walls are slowly sloping downward, returning to the level of the earth. The thick canopy of the forest begins to thin out, allowing large patches of blue sky to break through the branches. You can feel a change in the wind. It is no longer trapped and still. It is moving freely, carrying the scent of open space. You walk up a slight incline, the trees giving way to a vast expanse of rolling hills. The sudden brightness makes you squint. The landscape here is painted in soft shades of gold and pale green. It is a sea of wild grass, swaying gently in the morning breeze. It looks like the ocean, but made of earth and wind. The sheer scale of the open world makes you feel very small, but not insignificant. You are a moving piece in a beautiful, endless puzzle. You follow the faint trail that cuts through the tall grass. the blades brushing against your boots with a soft, shushing sound. Shh, shh. It is a new rhythm for a new terrain. Far in the distance, dotting the side of a large hill, you notice small white shapes, like clouds resting on the ground. As you draw closer, the shapes slowly resolve into a flock of sheep. They are grazing peacefully, moving as a single, slow-breathing entity. And then you hear it, a faint, clear sound carrying over the wind. The hollow chime of a wooden bell, followed by a sharp, melodic whistle. You trace the sound to the crest of the hill. There, leaning heavily on a long wooden staff, stands a solitary figure, the shepherd. You decide to alter your course slightly, guiding your steps toward the crest of the hill. The climb is gentle but steady, warming your blood. As you approach, a dog bounds forward from the tall grass. It is a working dog, lean and alert, with intelligent brown eyes and a coat the color of dried mud. It stops a few paces from you, letting out a low, interrogative bark. Not a threat, just a question. You stop, holding out an open hand, palm up. The dog sniffs the air, decides you carry no danger, and trots back to its master's side, its tail wagging slowly. You reach the top of the hill. The shepherd is an older man, his face deeply lined by years of sun, wind, and solitude. His cloak is woven from thick, undyed wool, blending perfectly with the landscape around him. He looks like he sprouted from the very earth he stands on. He does not look surprised to see you. In places like this, travelers are rare, but they are never unexpected. He offers a slow, dignified nod. You return the gesture. Words are not always necessary when the road brings two quiet souls together. He gestures with his staff to a patch of flattened grass near his feet, an invitation. You slide your bag from your shoulder and sit down, crossing your legs. The shepherd lowers himself slowly, sitting beside his dog, who rests its chin on his knee. You open your bag and pull out the thick round loaf of dark bread you packed this morning. You break it cleanly in half with your hands. The sound of the crust cracking is loud in the quiet air. You hold out the larger half to the shepherd. He looks at the bread, then at you, and accepts it with a slight smile, a silent exchange of respect. From beneath his heavy cloak, the shepherd produces a small leather flask. He uncorks it and offers it to you. You take it, wiping the rim with the back of your hand, and take a sip. It is fresh goat's milk, incredibly cold and sweet. It coats your throat, rich and fortifying. You hand the flask back, and for a long time, neither of you speaks. You just sit there, on top of the world, sharing a meal. You chew the rough bread, tasting the salt and the grain, while the shepherd does the same. You watch the sheep moving slowly across the valley below. There is a profound, beautiful simplicity in this moment. You are a traveler bound for the great spire. He is a guardian bound to his flock. Your lives will touch for perhaps half an hour, and then you will part ways, likely never to meet again. But right now, you are equals. Two men sharing bread and milk under the vast, uncaring sky. The wind whispers through the grass, a sound as old as time itself. The dog sighs, closing its eyes. You feel a deep sense of peace settle over you, warmer than your woolen cloak. When the bread is finished, you wipe your hands on your trousers and stand up. The shepherd remains seated, but he looks up at you, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He raises his wooden staff an inch off the ground and taps it twice against the earth. A blessing for a safe journey. You bow your head slightly, pick up your bag, and turn your face back toward the east. The path ahead is long. The spire is still far away, but your spirit is lighter now. You step back into the tall grass, the soft, shushing sound returning. Shh, shh. You leave the shepherd and his flock behind, disappearing into the golden hills, carrying the memory of his silent kindness with you. The rolling golden hills slowly begin to flatten out, guiding your steps toward a towering wall of deep, shadowed green. You are approaching the edge of the great forest. From a distance, it looks impenetrable, a solid mass of ancient wood and thick leaves that seems to swallow the horizon. But as you draw closer, the path reveals itself. A narrow, winding opening between two massive oak trees, standing like silent guards at the threshold of another world. You pause for a moment before stepping through. The wind from the open plains brushes against your back one last time, as if giving you a gentle push forward. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the sharp, clean air, and you cross the tree line. The change is immediate and profound. It is as if you have stepped through a heavy curtain into a grand, quiet cathedral. The bright, open sunlight is instantly replaced by a cool, dappled shade. The canopy above is so thick that the sky is reduced to tiny, scattered fragments of blue, glowing like stained glass hidden among the leaves. The temperature drops comfortably, a refreshing chill that cools the sweat on your brow. You pull your woolen cloak a little tighter around your shoulders, savoring the sudden shift. The air here smells entirely different. It is heavy and rich, carrying the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the sweet, almost sharp aroma of pine sap. It is the smell of things growing, falling, and returning to the soil in an endless, quiet cycle. As you walk further inside, the acoustics of the world change completely. The wide, carrying echoes of the open hills are gone. Here, every sound is swallowed by the thick moss and the heavy trunks. Your footsteps no longer crunch loudly. Instead, they fall with a soft, muffled thud against a thick carpet of brown pine needles and ancient, soft dirt. Thud, thud. Occasionally, a dry twig snaps under your heel with a sharp crack, the sound briefly cutting through the stillness before the forest absorbs it again. You find yourself walking lighter, stepping carefully, instinctively respecting the deep quiet of this ancient place. You look up at the trees surrounding you. They are impossibly tall, their trunks wide enough that 3 men linking arms could not encircle them. Their bark is rough and deeply grooved, covered in patches of pale green lichen and dark velvety moss. You reach out a hand as you pass one of the giants, dragging your fingers lightly across the textured wood. It feels solid, permanent, and alive. You can almost sense the slow, steady pulse of sap rising from the deep roots hidden far beneath your feet. These trees have stood here for centuries. They have survived brutal winters and scorching summers. They watched the Roman legions march, and they will still be standing long after you have reached the Great Spire. There is a strange comfort in knowing how small your journey is compared to the life of a single oak. The forest is not silent, but its noises are secrets whispered just for you. High above, in the very tops of the trees, the wind is moving. You cannot feel it down here on the path, but you can hear it. It sounds like the distant rushing of a vast ocean, a continuous soothing roar that lulls your thoughts into a peaceful rhythm. Somewhere to your left, a woodpecker begins its rhythmic drumming against a hollow trunk. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoes slightly, a lonely but industrious rhythm. Down in the underbrush, there is a sudden, dry rustle. A squirrel, perhaps, or a wild hare, darting away from your path to observe you safely from the shadows of a fern. You do not see them, but you feel their presence. You are a guest in their vast wooden house. You walk for hours, completely losing track of time. In the heart of the deep woods, The sun cannot act as your clock. The light remains a constant, glowing emerald green. Your mind begins to wander, floating freely on the rhythm of your own footsteps. The repetitive motion of walking becomes a kind of meditation. Left foot, right foot. Breathe in the damp earth. Breathe out the fatigue. You think about nothing, and you think about everything. The weight of your bag is a comforting anchor on your shoulder, reminding you of your physical form, while your thoughts drift upward into the branches. You are completely isolated from the rest of humanity, yet you have never felt less alone. The forest wraps around you like a heavy, protective blanket. Slowly, you begin to notice a subtle change in the air. The rich smell of pine and earth is joined by something else, something fresh, cold and mineral. The faint, unmistakable scent of moving water. You stop for a second, tilting your head to listen past the rushing of the wind in the canopy. There it is, a low, continuous murmur, bubbling gently beneath the quiet of the trees. A river is drawing near. The path begins to slope gently downward, the trees parting slightly to reveal a lighter space ahead. You adjust your grip on your bag and continue forward, letting the sound of the water guide your feet toward the end of the long forest. The dense canopy of the ancient forest finally begins to break apart, yielding to a wide, open corridor of pale sunlight. The heavy, muffled silence of the deep woods is slowly replaced by a new, powerful sound. It is a steady, rushing roar that fills the air and vibrates slightly beneath the soles of your boots. The trees part entirely, revealing a steep, grassy bank leading down to a wide, fast-moving river. The water is a deep, churning grey, flecked with white foam where it crashes against large, smooth boulders. You stand at the edge of the tree line for a moment, simply watching the raw, endless energy of the water. It is mesmerizing. A force of nature that does not care about the great spire, or the empires of men, or the smallness of a single traveler. It simply flows, as it has done since the world was young. You slowly make your way down the grassy slope, the sound of the river growing louder with every step. The air here is noticeably colder, carrying a fine, invisible mist that leaves tiny drops of moisture on your wool cloak and your eyelashes. It smells of wet stone, crushed reeds, and the deep, cold earth. As you reach the riverbank, you look to your right and see the ghostly remains of what used to be a magnificent bridge. Huge blocks of carved limestone, bound together by ancient mortar, jut out from the earth. They form a perfect, sweeping arch that reaches proudly toward the opposite bank, only to end abruptly in mid-air. The center of the bridge fell into the rushing water centuries ago. It is a beautiful ruin, a broken promise left behind by the Roman engineers who once tamed this wild land. You walk up to the edge of the broken bridge and rest your hand against the cold, rough stone. The craftsmanship is incredible, even in decay. But admiring history will not get you to the other side. You look down at the river. The water is not terribly deep, perhaps coming up to your knees at its highest point. But it is moving fast, and the rocks beneath the surface look treacherous and slick with dark green algae. You sigh softly. A traveler must do what a traveler must do. You find a large, flat rock near the water's edge and sit down, dropping your bag beside you. It is time to prepare. You reach down and begin to unlace your boots. It takes a bit of effort, as the leather laces have grown stiff in the damp air. You pull the left boot off, then the right. The sudden exposure to the cold, misty air makes your bare toes curl instinctively. You carefully peel off your thick woolen socks, placing them safely inside your boots to keep them dry. You roll the legs of your trousers up past your knees, exposing your pale skin to the chill. You stand up, feeling incredibly vulnerable without the heavy protective soles of your boots beneath you. The smooth, damp pebbles of the riverbank press sharply into your bare heels. You pick up a long, sturdy branch from the ground, left behind by the last storm. It will serve as a walking staff. A third leg to keep you anchored against the rushing current. You take a deep breath, clutching the wooden staff tightly, and step into the river. The shock of the cold is absolute and immediate. It is like stepping into liquid ice. The freezing water bites at your skin, sending a sharp, waking thrill all the way up your spine. For a moment, you cannot breathe, but you force yourself to exhale slowly, letting your body accept the temperature. You take another step. The current pushes hard against your shins, a constant, heavy pressure trying to sweep your legs out from under you. You plant your wooden staff firmly downstream, leaning your weight against it as you feel around with your bare foot for a solid rock. The stones are incredibly slippery, coated in invisible layers of slick moss. Every movement must be calculated. Every step is a negotiation with the river. You are halfway across now. The water is at its deepest, swirling angrily around your knees. The roar of the river is deafening, drowning out even your own thoughts. Your legs have gone completely numb from the cold, which is strangely a relief, as you no longer feel the sharp bite of the freezing water. You move with extreme slowness. Step. Plant the staff. Shift the weight. Step again. You look up for a brief second, fixing your eyes on the muddy bank on the other side. It seems incredibly far away, but you know that if you just keep moving, inch by cautious inch, you will reach it. You do not fight the river, you simply endure it. Finally, the water begins to grow shallow. Your toes find the soft, yielding mud of the opposite bank. You take one last, splashing step and drag yourself out of the freezing current, collapsing onto the damp grass. You are breathing heavily, your heart pounding loudly in your chest. You drop the wooden staff, its job done, and sit up, looking back at the churning water you just conquered. The broken Roman bridge still stands silently in the background, a monument to the past. You have crossed the boundary. Your legs are bright red from the cold, tingling painfully as the blood begins to rush back into your numb skin. But you are safe. You pull a small linen cloth from your bag and begin to vigorously dry your feet, welcoming the friction and the returning warmth. The hardest part of the morning is over. You pull your thick, dry socks back on and slide your feet into the comforting, familiar embrace of your leather boots. You are ready for whatever lies ahead. You tie the leather laces of your boots. The simple act feels like an incredible luxury after the freezing bite of the river. You stand up, stamping your feet a few times against the soft earth to encourage the warm blood to flow. The heat returns, bringing a satisfying, prickly sensation to your toes. You sling your bag over your shoulder and turn your back to the rushing water, facing the gentle slope ahead. The roar of the river slowly fades behind you with every step, replaced by the quiet rustle of the wind moving through tall, dry weeds. The path here is barely visible, little more than a memory of a road pressed into the earth. Nature is quick to erase the marks of men when they stop walking. As you crest a low hill, the landscape changes again. The trees here are scattered, yielding to a small, hidden valley, shaped like a gentle bowl. Nestled at the bottom, almost entirely swallowed by wild ivy and tall grass, are the grey, skeletal remains of a hamlet. It is a tiny village, perhaps no more than 6 or 7 houses in its prime. Now, it is a ghost. You pause at the top of the hill, looking down at the quiet ruins. There is no smoke rising from the chimneys, no sound of dogs barking or children playing. or wood being chopped. There is only the wind, blowing through empty windows like a breath through a hollow reed. It is a place completely surrendered to time. You walk down into the valley, your boots brushing against waist-high ferns and creeping briars. You approach the first structure. The thatched roof is entirely gone, rotted away decades ago, leaving only the bare wooden ribs of the rafters pointing toward the sky like pale fingers. The stone walls still stand, but they are buckled and weary, held together as much by the thick, green vines of ivy as by the original mortar. You step through the open doorway. There is no door left to push. The floor inside is dirt, covered in a soft carpet of moss and dead leaves. In the center of the room, a circle of blackened stones marks the hearth. The fire here has been cold for a very long time. You stand in the center of the ruined room, closing your eyes and trying to imagine the life that once filled this space. The smell of a boiling stew, the warmth of a fire pushing back the winter chill, the hushed voices of a family telling stories in the dark. It is a strange, melancholy feeling to stand in a place where people lived, loved, and eventually vanished. Why did they leave? Was it a harsh winter that drove them away? A sickness that swept through the valley? Or did they simply pack their belongings one spring morning, seeking an easier life, closer to the great cities? The stones keep their secrets. They do not answer. They only wait, slowly crumbling back into the earth from which they were dug. You step back out into the overgrown street, wandering slowly between the remains of the other houses. Nature is a patient, unstoppable conqueror. Small saplings are growing straight through the floors of what used to be bedrooms. Wildflowers bloom in the corners of collapsed pantries. You spot an old apple tree near the edge of the hamlet. It has grown wild and untamed, its branches heavy with small, tart fruit that no one is left to harvest. You walk over and pick one. It is imperfect, scarred by the weather. But as you take a bite, the sharp, sweet juice bursts on your tongue. It is a tiny, living gift from the people who planted this tree generations ago, a sweet legacy left behind in a forgotten place. Near the base of the apple tree, half buried in the mud and fallen leaves, you see a flash of pale color. You kneel down and carefully brush the dirt away. It is a small wooden horse, carved from a single piece of pine. One of its legs is broken off, and the wood is softened by years of rain. But the shape is unmistakable, a child's toy. You hold it in your palm, feeling the smooth edges worn down by tiny hands. You do not put it in your bag. It does not belong to you. You place it gently on a flat, dry stone near the trunk of the tree, resting it securely where it will not be trampled. A small gesture of respect for the ghosts of this quiet valley. The sun is climbing higher now, warming the damp air of the hollow. It is time to move on. You cannot stay in the past forever, even a past as peaceful as this one. You give the abandoned hamlet one last look, memorizing the way the light catches the ivy on the ruined walls. Then, you turn toward the eastern ridge, finding the faint trail that leads out of the valley. You leave the silent houses behind, carrying the taste of the wild apple and the memory of the wooden toy with you. The great spire is waiting. The road calls you forward. The path leading out of the hidden valley is steep but short. You climb steadily, your boots finding purchase on the roots of ancient trees that act as natural stairs. As you reach the crest of the ridge, the quiet melancholy of the abandoned hamlet is washed away by a sudden, steady breeze. You are back on high ground. The landscape opens up before you once more, revealing a much wider, well-worn dirt road cutting through the sweeping countryside. This is not a forgotten hollow or a wild forest trail. This is a vein of the world, carrying the lifeblood of travel and trade. You step onto the hard-packed earth, feeling the solid, reassuring width of a road that knows many footsteps. You walk for a time in comfortable silence, the sun warming your shoulders through the thick wool of your cloak. The air here smells of dry dust and sweet, flowering weeds. And then you hear it. A sound so slow and rhythmic, it almost blends into the natural noise of the wind. The heavy, dull thud of large hooves, the dry, complaining creak of wooden wheels turning on ungreased iron axles. Creak, thud, creak, thud. You do not stop or turn around, but you slow your pace, allowing the sound to catch up to you. There is no danger in that slow, exhausted rhythm. It is the sound of honest, weary labor. Eventually, a large shadow stretches past your feet. A heavy cart pulls up slowly beside you, drawn by a massive grey ox with tired, gentle eyes. The beast breathes heavily, its large nostrils flaring with every step, puffing tiny clouds of steam into the crisp air. Sitting on the wooden bench of the cart is a merchant. He is a man made of leather and road dust, his face heavily lined, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that casts his eyes in deep shadow. The cart is piled high with tightly bound bundles of raw wool, wooden crates smelling faintly of dried lavender, and small leather sacks that clinking softly with the movement of the road. The merchant looks down at you, pulling slightly on the leather reins to match the ox's pace to yours. He does not stop. A heavy cart in motion must stay in motion. He offers a slow, easy nod, raising 2 fingers to the brim of his hat. A long walk for one pair of legs, he says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that perfectly matches the creaking of his cart. You smile and nod back, gesturing to the endless road ahead. The spire does not move, you reply softly, so there is no need to run. The merchant chuckles, a dry, dusty sound. True enough, traveler. True enough. He shifts his weight on the wooden bench, making room. I cannot offer you much speed, but I can offer you a place to rest your boots for a mile or two, if you don't mind the smell of sheep and old wood. You consider the offer. Your legs are strong, but the invitation is warm. You grip the side of the cart and pull yourself up, sitting beside him on the worn wooden planks. The perspective changes instantly from up here. You are no longer looking at the dirt in front of your toes, but at the sprawling horizon. The cart sways gently from side to side, a slow, hypnotic rocking motion. Creak, sway, creak, sway. The merchant does not demand conversation. He understands the etiquette of the road, but after a while he begins to speak, almost as if talking to the air itself. He tells you of the towns he has passed, of markets filled with the smell of roasting meats and sharp spices. He speaks of the shifting weather in the north, and how the rivers are running high this year. His words are not exciting tales of battle or danger. They are the slow, comforting gossip of the world. They say the great spire is casting a longer shadow these days, the merchant murmurs, his eyes fixed on the distant east. I've only seen it once, when I was a much younger man. It makes you feel like a speck of dust, it does. But a speck of dust with a purpose. He reaches into a pouch at his belt and pulls out a handful of dried, dark cherries, offering you some. You take a few, the fruit tasting intensely sweet and sharp, a burst of flavor against the dusty road. You sit together, chewing the dried fruit, watching the world roll by at the pace of an old grey ox. For an hour, you are not a solitary wanderer. You are part of a very small, very slow caravan. The rhythm of the cart settles deep into your bones, relaxing muscles you didn't even know were tense. But all shared roads eventually fork. Ahead, A smaller path branches off toward a cluster of farmhouses to the south. The merchant gently tugs the reins, guiding the ox toward the turn. "My trade takes me south from here, traveler," he says, tipping his hat once more. You slide off the back of the cart, your boots hitting the dirt with a soft puff of dust. "May your wheels stay whole and your roads stay dry," you say, offering the traditional parting blessing. He smiles, a flash of white in a dusty face. You stand and watch as the cart slowly creaks its way down the southern path, the sound fading piece by piece. You are alone again, but the silence feels richer now. You adjust the strap of your bag, turn your face back toward the east, and begin to walk. The spire is waiting. The golden light of the late afternoon slowly begins to deepen into a rich, burnt orange. The shadows cast by the trees and the rocks stretch out across the dirt road, growing longer and thinner with every passing minute. The heat of the day, which had soaked into the earth and warmed your shoulders, is now rising and dissipating into the cooling air. You can feel the exact moment the sun dips below the horizon. A sudden, sharp chill sweeps across the open fields, carrying the scent of damp grass and approaching night. The birds have stopped their singing, replaced by the early, rhythmic chirping of crickets hiding in the brush. The road ahead loses its sharp edges, blurring into the gathering dusk. It is time to stop. A traveler who walks in the dark is a traveler who invites misfortune. You step off the main path, walking a short distance into a small grove of silver birch trees. The ground here is relatively flat and sheltered from the wind by a low outcropping of limestone. It is a perfect camp. You drop your heavy bag to the earth with a dull thud, rolling your shoulders to release the tension of the day's miles. The silence of the evening is immense. Without the creaking of the merchant's cart or the rushing of the river, the world feels completely still. You begin to gather dry branches, feeling the brittle snap of dead wood under your boots and in your hands. Snap, snap. You arrange them carefully in a small circle of stones left behind by whoever camped here last. You are not the first to seek shelter under these trees, and you will not be the last. You kneel in the dirt, pulling a small pouch from your belt. Inside is a piece of hard flint and a curved striker of high-carbon steel. You place a small nest of dry moss and shaved birch bark in the center of your woodpile. You strike the steel against the flint. Clink. A shower of bright orange sparks falls into the dark, but they fade. You adjust your grip and strike again. Clink. This time, a single spark catches the edge of the dry moss, glowing like a tiny, angry star. You lean down, putting your face close to the earth, and blow softly. The glow spreads, eating the moss, until a thin ribbon of pale smoke curls upward into the twilight. With one final, gentle breath, a small, beautiful flame bursts to life. The fire grows quickly, feeding on the dry twigs before catching the thicker branches. The crackle and pop of the burning wood is the most comforting sound in the wild. Crack, pop. It is a tiny dancing piece of the sun, brought down to warm your hands. You sit back on your bedroll, pulling your heavy woolen cloak tightly around you. The heat on your face is a sharp contrast to the cold pressing against your back. You open your bag and pull out the remainder of your dark bread and a piece of the hard cheese. The food is simple, but hunger makes it taste like a feast cooked for a king. You chew slowly, watching the flames twist and leap, letting the hypnotic motion clear your mind of all thoughts. Above you, the sky has turned a bruised, impossible shade of dark navy, and the first stars are beginning to pierce the veil. They look like grains of coarse salt spilled across a black table. And then, rising slowly over the eastern horizon, comes the moon. It is a massive, heavy disk of glowing silver, bathing the world in a cold, ghostly light. The leaves of the birch trees shimmer, turning pale and white in the moonlight. The world does not sleep in the dark. It merely changes. You hear the distant, lonely howl of a wolf, miles away across the hills. It is a wild sound, but sitting by your fire, you feel perfectly safe. You are a part of the night. You take a sip of water from your flask, the liquid shockingly cold against your teeth. You lie back on your thick wool blanket, resting your head on your packed bag. The fire is dying down now, reducing itself to a bed of glowing, ruby-red embers. They pulse softly with the gentle night breeze. You look up at the infinite expanse of the stars, feeling incredibly small, yet perfectly placed in the grand tapestry of the world. The great spire is out there, waiting in the east, but tonight, the journey is paused. Your eyes grow heavy, the crackle of the embers lulling you into a deep, dreamless rest. The silver moon watches over you. You are safe. You are asleep. You open your eyes to a sky that is no longer bruised with the purple of dawn, nor is it the bright, clear blue of yesterday. It is a solid, heavy blanket of slate grey. The silver moon is gone, swallowed completely by thick, rolling clouds that hang incredibly low over the birch trees. The air feels entirely different this morning. It is no longer crisp and dry. It is heavy, thick, with unseen moisture, pressing against your skin with a cool, damp weight. You take a slow, deep breath, filling your lungs with a scent that is older than memory. Petrichor, the deep, earthy, intoxicating perfume of dry soil waiting eagerly for water. It is the smell of the world holding its breath. The wind has picked up, rustling the silver leaves above you with a frantic, urgent energy. The branches sway and creak, warning everything below that a storm is coming, and it is coming fast. You move with quiet purpose, abandoning the slow, meditative pace of the previous morning. There is no time to linger over a warm cup of tea today. You shake out your heavy woolen blanket, watching the stray leaves fall from the fabric, then roll it tight and strap it securely to your bag. Your movements are efficient, practiced by years of living under the open sky. You kick loose dirt over the cold ashes of your fire, leaving no trace of your fleeting warmth behind. Just as you pull the thick leather drawstrings of your bag closed, tying them in a heavy knot, you feel it. A single heavy drop of water strikes the back of your bare hand. It is icy cold, a sharp contrast to your warm skin. Then another hits the shoulder of your cloak with a soft, dark thud. Plop, plop. You look up into the endless grey expanse. The sky finally opens, not with a furious, violent crash of thunder, but with a deep, sweeping sigh. The rain begins to fall. You pull the heavy hood of your cloak over your head, stepping out from beneath the sparse, unreliable cover of the birch grove and back onto the dirt road. The world around you transforms instantly under the falling water. The pale, dusty path turns into a slick, dark ribbon of mud within seconds. The colors of the forest and the open fields deepen dramatically, the pale greens becoming impossibly rich and vibrant, the dry browns turning to shades of dark, wet chocolate. The sound is absolute and all-encompassing. It is a million tiny drums beating against the leaves, the tall grass, and the hard earth. It is a beautiful, rushing white noise that washes away every other thought in your mind. Shh. The rain hits your woolen hood with a steady, rhythmic tapping. The natural oils left in the sheep's wool repel the water perfectly, keeping your head dry and warm, while the wild world outside is entirely drenched. You are a walking sanctuary, moving through the deluge. But a traveler cannot walk in a heavy, relentless downpour forever. without the damp cold eventually sinking into their bones. The water begins to run down the sides of your cloak in tiny, rapid rivers. Your leather boots, usually so light and comfortable, grow heavy with the clinging mud. Each step requires just a little more effort, a little more focus. Squelch, squelch. The rhythm of the road has changed from a dry crunch to a wet, heavy pull. You need shelter. You scan the blurred landscape through the grey, shifting curtain of rain. The road begins to wind upward again, cutting through a steep, rocky hillside that rises sharply to your left. You squint against the falling water, wiping a stray drop from your eyelash. There, carved into the side of a towering, pale limestone cliff, you see a dark, welcoming crescent. A shallow cave, formed by thousands of years of wind and ancient water biting into the stone. You quicken your pace, leaning forward into the wind, your boots slipping slightly in the fresh mud. The sound of the rain roars louder in your ears as you climb the short, rocky incline toward the cliff face. Your breathing grows slightly heavier, a small cloud of white mist escaping your lips with every exhale. You reach the rocky overhang, placing one muddy hand against the dry stone to steady yourself, and step out of the storm. You cross the invisible threshold into the dusty, quiet shadows. The contrast is immediate, almost shocking, and entirely wonderful. The furious hissing roar of the rain is suddenly muffled, pushed away, echoing off the stone walls of the cave in a deep, resonant hum. You push your wet hood back, running a hand through your damp hair, letting out a long, slow sigh of pure relief. The air inside the shallow cave is cool and perfectly still. It smells of ancient dust, dry stone, and the faint metallic scent of minerals. It is a perfect natural refuge, untouched by the chaos outside. You drop your heavy bag to the dry, uneven floor with a satisfying thud. You unfasten the iron clasp at your throat and pull the heavy, wet woolen cloak from your shoulders. You shake it out carefully, sending a spray of water droplets back out into the rain, and drape it over a jagged piece of rock to dry. Underneath, your linen shirt is completely untouched by the damp. You feel light again. You walk slightly deeper into the cave, running your fingertips along the rough limestone wall. The stone is cold, but it holds a strange, silent comfort. You are protected. As your eyes adjust to the dim, grey light, you notice something on the wall near the back of the cave. Faint, black smudges. You step closer, tracing the shapes with your eyes. It is old soot from fires burned long before you were born. Other travelers, perhaps centuries ago, sat exactly where you were standing, seeking refuge from the very same sky. You wonder if they were Roman soldiers marching north, or medieval merchants caught between towns, or simple shepherds protecting their flocks. The history of the world is not just in great battles or grand castles. It is written here, in the cold ashes of a forgotten fire in a nameless cave. It brings a small, warm smile to your face. You are sharing a moment with the ghosts of the road. You walk back to the entrance and sit down on the dry, dusty earth, crossing your legs comfortably. You do not need a fire right now. You are not cold. You are simply resting. You open your bag and pull out the last small wedge of hard cheese and your wooden cup. You take a bite, the sharp, salty flavor, incredibly satisfying after the physical effort of the muddy climb. You sit and watch the curtain of water falling just inches from your boots. It forms a translucent, shimmering wall between you and the wild world, a barrier made of water and gravity. The raindrops hit the rocky ledge outside and shatter into tiny, glittering crowns before being swept away. It is a hypnotic, endless dance. The rhythm of the rain hitting the rocks is steady, unhurried, and infinitely calming. Tap, patter, tap. It is nature's oldest, most perfect lullaby. You lean back against the cool limestone wall, resting your head against the solid rock. Your muscles slowly unclench. The tension leaves your shoulders, flowing down your arms and disappearing into the earth. You close your eyes, perfectly content to let the storm rage while you sit in absolute, untouchable peace. The great spire is hidden entirely behind the clouds today, but you're not in a hurry. The spire can wait. The rain washes the world clean, taking the dust of the miles with it. You simply sit, safe and dry, listening to the music of the falling water, drifting into a deep, waking dream. The deep, resonant hum of the rain, echoing off the limestone walls, slowly fades. The storm has passed, leaving behind a profound, dripping silence. You stretch your legs, feeling the pleasant ache of rested muscles. The air inside the cave is still cool, but the heavy humidity of the downpour has lifted entirely. You stand up, brushing the dry dust from your trousers, and walk toward the entrance of your stony refuge. The world outside looks entirely different now. The heavy grey clouds are breaking apart, tearing open to reveal brilliant patches of washed blue. The sun fights its way through, casting sharp rays that catch the lingering water droplets, turning the forest below into a glittering sea. The smell is magnificent. It is the sharp, incredibly clean scent of crushed pine needles and wet stone. You take your woolen cloak, feeling its dry, comforting weight, and drape it over your shoulders. It is time to climb. You step out of the cave and back onto the path. The road here is no longer a soft dirt trail. You're moving much higher into the hills now, and the path has transformed into a rugged staircase of natural bedrock. The rain has washed the stones clean, revealing streaks of pale white quartz and dark grey granite that sparkle under your heavy boots. The incline is steep, immediately demanding a new rhythm from your body. You lean forward slightly, letting your strong legs take the brunt of the work. Your breathing deepens, expanding your chest with every measured step. You can feel your heart beating a steady, reliable drum inside your ribs. It is the honest fatigue of a human body doing exactly what it was built to do. As you ascend, the landscape around you begins to change drastically. The tall, leafy oaks of the lower valleys are left far behind. In their place, you find ancient, twisted pines. Their trunks are incredibly thick, bent into dramatic shapes by centuries of relentless winter storms. Their roots grip the bare rock like desperate fingers, refusing to let go of the mountain. The air up here is noticeably thinner. It is crisp, extremely cold, and carries a sharp bite that wakes up every nerve in your face. You pull the heavy collar of your cloak up around your neck, burying your chin in the warm sheep's wool to protect your skin from the chill. You pause on a wide ledge of limestone to catch your breath and look back at the long path you have just conquered. The view is simply breathtaking. The world is laid out below you, like a grand, meticulously painted map. You can see the dark line of the river you crossed yesterday, now reduced to a thin silver thread winding through the green canopy. You can see the rolling golden hills where you shared bread with the shepherd, looking perfectly smooth and miniature. The sheer scale of the world makes you dizzy for a brief, wonderful moment. You are so incredibly small, just a tiny moving speck on the face of this massive earth. Yet, your own 2 feet have carried you across all of it. There is a quiet, powerful pride in that realization. You turn your back to the valley and continue the climb. The wind begins to howl as you approach the narrow gap between 2 towering snow-capped peaks. This is the high pass. The wind is incredibly strong, pushing against your chest as if testing your resolve to enter this high place. It whistles fiercely through the jagged rocks, creating a haunting, melodic hum. Woo! You narrow your eyes against the biting cold, leaning your weight into the invisible wall of moving air. You grip the leather strap of your bag tightly, pushing forward. The stone beneath your boots is loose and treacherous here, crunching loudly with every effort. Crunch, slip, crunch. You find your solid footing and press on, refusing to be pushed back down the mountain. Finally, the steep incline levels out. The howling wind suddenly drops, breaking against the surrounding peaks, leaving only a sweeping breeze. You have reached the summit of the pass. You step through the narrow corridor of rock and emerge onto an incredibly wide, flat plateau overlooking the vast eastern lands. The physical relief washes over you in a glorious warming wave. Your leg muscles tremble slightly, finally allowed to relax. You drop your heavy bag to the solid rock with a loud thud, letting your arms hang loosely at your sides. You take a deep, greedy breath of the thin mountain air. You have made it. You are standing on the roof of the world. In the center of the windswept plateau stands a solitary, unexpected monument. It is not a grand statue carved by a master artist. It is a cairn, a simple, tall pile of loose mountain stones. For thousands of years, every single traveler who survived the harsh climb through the high pass has picked up a single rock and added it to the pile. It is a silent testament to human endurance. A way of saying, without words, I was here. I climbed the mountain. I survived. You walk slowly toward the ancient pile, feeling a deep sense of reverence. You look down and find a smooth stone near your boot. You pick it up, feeling its freezing weight in your palm, and place it gently near the very top of the cairn. It clinks softly against the others. Clink. You are now permanently a part of this mountain's quiet history. You sit down heavily beside the cairn, resting your tired back against the sun-warmed stones. The heavy clouds of the morning storm have broken entirely, and the late afternoon sun bathes the high plateau in a rich, deeply golden light. You look out over the eastern edge of the cliff. The land below drops away into a vast, sweeping valley, painted in shades of violet and deep green by the approaching evening. And there, incredibly far in the distance, piercing the hazy horizon like a needle of pale bone, is the Great Spire. It is visibly larger now, no longer just a rumor on the edge of the sky. It is real, it is massive, and it is waiting for you. You close your eyes, feeling the wonderful warmth of the setting sun on your cold face, listening to the gentle whisper of the high-altitude wind. The journey ahead is still long, but in this singular moment, high above the noise of the world, everything is perfectly at peace. You leave the windswept plateau of the high pass, just as the morning sun begins to chase the deep purple shadows from the jagged peaks. The descent is an entirely different kind of labor. While climbing burned your lungs and thighs, walking downhill asks for careful balance, steady knees, and absolute patience. Your boots find the natural, uneven steps carved into the mountainside by ancient glaciers, gravity pulling you gently but firmly downward. The sharp, biting cold of the summit slowly begins to soften as you lose altitude. The stunted, wind-battered pines give way to taller, straighter trees, their dark green needles forming a thick canopy that catches the early sunlight. You breathe deeply, feeling the air grow thicker and richer in your lungs. The physical relief of the descent is wonderful, allowing your mind to drift away from the immediate, burning struggle of putting one foot in front of the other. As you wind your way deeper into the steep alpine valley, the weather shifts dramatically. Mountain air is famously unpredictable, and today is no exception. A thick white fog begins to roll in from the eastern ridges, pouring over the rocks like a slow-moving, silent river of milk. Within minutes, the vast, sweeping views of the lowlands are completely swallowed by the mist. The world shrinks rapidly until you can only see a dozen paces ahead. The forest becomes a ghostly, incredibly quiet place. The thick fog dampens sound completely, wrapping the towering trees and the massive boulders in a heavy, muffled blanket. You pull your woolen cloak a little tighter around your shoulders, feeling the familiar, clinging dampness of the mountain clouds. It is not a frightening feeling, but it is deeply isolating. You are a solitary figure moving through a white, empty void, guided only by the rocky path beneath your boots. Then, cutting through the heavy silence of the fog, you hear it. A deep, resonant tone that seems to vibrate right through the damp air and into your chest. Dong! You stop instantly, planting your wooden staff against the wet stones, and tilt your head to listen. For a long moment, there is only the whisper of the wind through the unseen pines. Then, it comes again, rolling down the mountainside. Dong! It is a massive bronze bell. The sound is incredibly rich, carrying a slow, mournful, yet deeply comforting rhythm. It is not an alarm. It is a beacon. In the thick mountain fog, where a single wrong step could lead a weary traveler off a steep cliff, the bell is a sonic lighthouse. You adjust the heavy strap of your bag on your shoulder and begin to follow the sound, letting the deep, rhythmic tolling pull you safely forward through the blinding white mist. The path finally levels out, and the fog slowly begins to part, revealing a massive, awe-inspiring structure clinging stubbornly to the side of the mountain. It is a monastery. The high walls are built from the same dark, rough-hewn stone as the cliffs around it, making the building look as though it grew naturally out of the living rock. The architecture is ancient and severe, with narrow, arched windows and a heavy slate roof designed to shed the crushing weight of winter snows. Above the main sanctuary, hanging securely in a sturdy wooden tower, is the great bronze bell. As you approach the heavy oak doors, the bell tolls one last time, the sound washing over you in a physical wave of deep vibration. Through the narrow windows, you can see the faint, welcoming glow of orange candlelight flickering against the dark stone. You reach out and push against the rusted iron ring of the heavy door. It opens with a slow, drawn-out creak, protesting the damp mountain air. You step inside, leaving the cold white fog behind. The interior of the monastery is breathtaking in its stark, quiet simplicity. Thick, vaulted ceilings arch high above, lost in the dancing shadows. The air here smells absolutely incredible. It is a rich, intoxicating blend of melted beeswax candles, old parchment, and the sharp, clean scent of burning pine wood. A monk steps out from the shadows of the corridor to greet you. He wears a simple, rough-spun brown habit, tied at the waist with a frayed braided cord. He is an older man, his face worn smooth by years of quiet devotion and harsh mountain winters. He does not speak. He simply bows his head in a gesture of absolute welcoming peace, and gestures gently with his hand for you to follow him. He leads you down a long stone corridor to a small, sparsely furnished room. A fire is crackling cheerfully in a large stone hearth, pushing back the damp chill of the mountains. He points to a heavy, high-backed wooden chair placed near the warmth. You drop your bag to the floor with a heavy sigh of relief and sit down. The wood is smooth, polished perfectly by generations of weary travelers who sat exactly where you are sitting now. The monk disappears for a moment, returning with a steaming clay mug cupped carefully in his weathered hands. He offers it to you with a gentle, silent smile. You wrap your cold fingers around the warm clay, bringing it to your lips. It is a strong herbal tea, brewed with chamomile, dried mountain mint, and a thick touch of wild honey. The hot liquid travels down your throat, spreading a profound healing warmth right into the center of your chest. You sit in the quiet room, sipping the sweet tea and watching the orange flames dance in the hearth. You think about the sheer dedication required to build this place. The men who hauled these massive stones up the treacherous mountain paths centuries ago. They built a sanctuary on the edge of the world, not for glory or wealth, but to offer a light in the dark and a bell in the fog for wanderers just like you. The silence of the monastery is a deliberate, cultivated peace. It is a beautiful silence meant for listening, for resting, and for healing the spirit. Outside the thick stone walls, the mountain wind begins to howl again, throwing the white fog against the high glass windows. But in here, you are perfectly safe. The fire crackles in the hearth. Pop, pop. The warmth of the sweet tea settles deep in your tired bones. You lean your head back against the solid wood of the chair, closing your eyes and letting out a long, slow breath. The great spire is still waiting for you far down in the eastern lowlands, and the journey is far from over. But for this afternoon, there is nowhere else you need to be. You sink entirely into the comfort of the sanctuary, letting the ancient peace of the mountain wash over you, drifting into a quiet, dreamless rest. The heavy oak doors of the monastery close behind you with a solid, definitive thud. You stand for a moment on the stone steps, taking a deep breath of the mountain air. The thick fog of the previous day has vanished entirely, leaving behind a sky so clear and brilliantly blue it almost hurts your eyes. The morning sun is strong, carrying a true, piercing warmth that you haven't felt since you began the ascent days ago. You pull the hood of your woolen cloak down, letting the sunlight wash over your face and neck. The deep rest within the quiet stone walls has restored your strength completely. Your legs feel light, and the heavy strap of your bag no longer bites into your shoulder. The monks provided you with fresh water, a wrapped parcel of hard mountain cheese, and their silent blessing. You are ready to descend into the eastern lowlands. The path leading away from the monastery is steep at first, but it quickly smooths out, transforming into a wide, gently sloping road carved into the side of the final foothills. The descent is rapid and easy. Within a few hours, the jagged, unforgiving rocks and the dark, twisting pines of the high country are gone. The temperature rises noticeably with every mile. You stop near a small, bubbling creek to unfasten the heavy iron clasp of your woolen cloak. You fold the thick fabric carefully and strap it to the outside of your bag. The lighter linen of your shirt feels wonderful against your skin, allowing the warm breeze to carry away the sweat of the walk. You take a drink from the creek, the water tasting faintly of the snowmelt high above, and press on. As the road levels out completely, the landscape opens up into an impossible, sprawling vastness. The mountains are finally behind you, standing like a wall of dark stone guarding the west. Before you lies a true ocean of gold. You have entered the great eastern plains. As far as your eyes can see, the earth is covered in endless fields of wild wheat and tall, dry grass, perfectly ripe under the late spring sun. The sheer scale of the open space is staggering. There are no thick forests to block your view, no deep valleys to hide the horizon. The world feels completely flat and infinite. And there, far in the very center of this golden expanse, standing stark and grey against the bright blue sky, is the Great Spire. It is no longer a tiny needle on the edge of vision. It dominates the landscape, a massive, ancient anchor pulling you forward. You step off the hard-packed dirt road and onto a narrower, softer path that cuts directly through the heart of the fields, The golden wheat is tall here, reaching up past your waist, the heavy heads of grain nodding lazily in the wind. The sound of this place is completely different from the silent mountains or the echoing forests. It is a constant, gentle rustle. As the warm breeze sweeps across the plains, it pushes the tall grass in long, rolling waves, making a soft, shushing sound that stretches for miles. Shh, shh. It is incredibly hypnotic, like listening to the slow, steady breathing of the earth itself. You drag your open hand lightly across the top of the wheat as you walk, feeling the dry, bristly texture of the husks against your palm. The heat of the afternoon sun is intense, but it is a dry, baking heat that feels good on your skin after the freezing dampness of the high pass. The air is thick with the sweet, dusty smell of hot grain and baked earth. The plains are buzzing with life. You hear the constant, vibrating hum of thousands of invisible insects hiding in the golden stalks. A large brown grasshopper leaps suddenly from the path, landing on your boot for a brief second before springing away into the safety of the wheat. High above, suspended in the impossibly blue sky, a hawk circles slowly on the thermal currents, a tiny dark silhouette looking for movement in the grass below. You are walking through a living, breathing tapestry of golden heat. You walk for hours without seeing another human soul, yet the fields never feel empty. The endless rhythm of the swaying wheat and the constant hum of the insects keep you company. The walking becomes automatic, a simple meditation of movement through the vastness. Left foot, right foot, brush the grain, feel the sun. The great spire grows larger with every hour, an imposing destination that never seems to get any closer, despite the miles you cover. But you are not discouraged. The golden fields are peaceful, and the road is flat. You are a small, quiet traveler, crossing a great, ancient stage, moving steadily toward the final horizon. The endless sea of golden wheat begins to change as the late afternoon sun dips lower in the sky. The relentless, dry heat of the plains softens into a comfortable, deeply warming glow that paints the world in shades of amber and pale orange. You have been walking through the swaying grass for hours, lulled into a quiet trance by the rhythmic brushing of the stalks against your waist. But now, the sharp, dry scent of the baked earth is joined by a new, refreshing smell. It is the heavy, cool scent of deep, slow-moving water and damp reeds. The terrain ahead dips slightly, revealing a wide, meandering river that cuts through the flat plains like a ribbon of dark glass. And spanning across this vast expanse of water is a monument of incredible, ancient defiance. It is a massive stone bridge, rising out of the flat landscape with the imposing dignity of a sleeping giant. Unlike the broken, ruined arch you crossed in the wild forest days ago, this structure has survived the centuries almost entirely intact. It is a masterpiece of old-world engineering, built by an empire that vanished long before you were born. 5 towering, perfectly symmetrical arches of pale limestone span the width of the river, their reflections mirrored flawlessly in the calm, dark water below. It looks like a row of massive, perfect circles resting on the surface of the world. You step off the soft, dusty trail of the plains and onto the wide, paved avenue that leads up to the bridge. The transition is sudden and jarring in the best possible way. The sound of your journey changes instantly. The soft, continuous rustling of the wheat is replaced by the sharp, authoritative clack of your leather boots striking solid, fitted pavement. Clack, clack. The stones beneath your feet are enormous, cut with such impossible precision that not even a blade of grass has managed to grow in the seams between them. The surface is worn incredibly smooth, polished to a dull shine by the passage of millions of footsteps, iron-rimmed cartwheels, and the heavy, marching boots of forgotten legions. You walk toward the center of the great bridge, feeling a strange sense of smallness. The sheer scale of the architecture makes you feel like a child wandering through a house built for giants. You reach the middle of the longest arch and stop, stepping up to the heavy stone parapet that guards the edge. You lean your forearms against the broad, flat capstone. The rock is pleasantly warm, having soaked up the intense heat of the sun all day long. You look over the edge, watching the wide, dark river flow silently 50 feet below. It is a powerful, deep current, far too wide to swim, moving with a slow, unstoppable momentum toward the distant sea. The air here is noticeably cooler, carrying the faint, metallic smell of fresh water and wet limestone. A small flock of swallows darts and weaves beneath the great arches, hunting for insects in the shadows, their high-pitched calls echoing sharply against the ancient stone. You rest your chin on your folded hands, staring down at the water, and you cannot help but think of the men who built this. To the simple farmers and nomadic tribes who lived on these plains centuries ago, the engineers who raised these stones must have seemed like gods or monsters. They dragged these massive blocks from quarries hundreds of miles away, turning the wild, impassable river into a permanent road. They forced the landscape to obey their will. Empires rise, they burn, and they turn to dust. But their arrogance and their brilliance are left behind in the stone. The men are gone, but their bridge remains, patiently carrying a solitary traveler toward the great spire. You stand there for a long time, allowing the cool breeze from the river to wash over your face, listening to the echoing cries of the swallows. The sun is beginning to cast long, stretching shadows across the paved stones, signaling the slow approach of evening. The great spire stands tall on the eastern horizon, its jagged peak catching the golden light. It is closer now. You can begin to see the subtle, complex textures of its impossibly high walls. You push yourself away from the warm parapet, adjusting the strap of your bag on your shoulder. The bridge has offered you safe passage and a moment of profound, quiet reflection. You turn your boots back toward the east, the sharp clack of your footsteps ringing out once more as you cross the final arches and step off the bridge, leaving the sleeping giant behind. The solid, heavy clack of your boots against the ancient limestone bridge finally gives way to a softer, dustier road. The sun is sinking lower now, casting long, deeply golden shadows across the plains. As you walk, the profound, isolated silence of the wild world begins to change. It is subtle at first, a low, vibrating hum that you feel in your chest before you actually hear it. Then the road begins to widen, and the soft dirt is replaced by uneven, rounded cobblestones. The rhythmic crunch of your steps becomes a sharper rhythmic tap, tap, tap. Up ahead, rising from the flat expanse of the golden fields, is a cluster of buildings. It is a town, sprawling out from the base of a small hill, surrounded by a low wooden palisade. The hum grows louder, resolving itself into the unmistakable, overlapping sound of hundreds of human voices. You are returning to civilization. You pass through the wide, open gates of the town, and immediately your senses are flooded. The main square is completely transformed into a vibrant, chaotic tapestry of a twilight market. Dozens of temporary stalls made of rough-hewn wood and brightly colored canvas crowd the cobblestone plaza. The visual shock of so much movement and color after days of empty plains is thrilling. But it is the smell that truly welcomes you back. It is a thick, intoxicating wall of aromas. You close your eyes for a second, just breathing it in. There is the rich, heavy scent of salted meats roasting slowly over open charcoal fires, the fat dripping and hissing as it hits the glowing embers. Sizzle. Beneath that, there are the sharp, exotic notes of foreign spices, piled high in woven baskets. Cumin, cinnamon, dried chili, and sweet cloves. It smells of life, of trade, and of survival. You walk slowly into the heart of the market, letting the crowd part around you like water around a stone. You are a dusty traveler, your woolen cloak and heavy bag marking you as someone who has walked a very long way. But here, you are just another face in the beautiful, anonymous sea of humanity. The sounds of the market are a symphony of commerce. Merchants call out their wares in rhythmic, practiced shouts. You hear the sharp, metallic clink of copper and silver coins being exchanged from hand to hand. Clink, clink. Heavy wooden cartwheels rumble violently over the uneven stones, while the delicate, high-pitched laughter of children weaves through the heavier voices of the adults. In the corner of the square, a solitary musician plucks a slow, melancholy tune on a wooden lute, the strings vibrating softly beneath the noise of the crowd. It is a chaotic noise, but it is not aggressive. It is the warm, comforting heartbeat of a community. Your stomach gives a low, hollow rumble, reminding you that your journey today has been fueled only by a piece of hard cheese and mountain water. You follow the thickest plume of fragrant smoke to a small, brightly lit stall near the center of the square. An old woman with flour on her apron is pulling fresh, flat rounds of bread from a hot clay oven. The heat radiating from the clay is intense, warming your face. You reach into your leather pouch and pull out a small copper coin, pressing it into her weathered hand. She smiles, a warm, toothy grin, and hands you a piece of the bread wrapped in a coarse brown leaf. It is incredibly hot to the touch. You tear off a piece, the steam escaping into the cool evening air, and take a bite. It is soft, slightly charred on the edges, and incredibly flavorful. The simple joy of hot, fresh food after miles of walking is a profound, grounding comfort. As you finish your meal, the sky above the town transitions from a fiery orange to a deep, bruised purple. The merchants begin to light their lanterns, hanging them from the wooden posts of their stalls. The square is slowly illuminated by dozens of warm, flickering yellow glows, casting dancing shadows against the stone walls of the surrounding buildings. The frenetic energy of the market begins to settle into a slower, more relaxed evening rhythm. You step away from the center of the square, finding a quiet stone bench near the edge of a public fountain. You sit down, letting the cool spray of the water mist against your skin, and look up over the tiled roofs of the town. There, rising impossibly high into the darkening sky, its peak catching the very last rays of the dying sun, is the Great Spire. It is massive now, its presence dominating the entire horizon. You will rest tonight in a real bed, in a loud and lively town, but the spire is waiting. The journey is almost at its end. The vibrant energy of the twilight market slowly begins to fade as you walk away from the central square. The sharp, overlapping voices of the merchants and the metallic clinking of coins soften into a gentle, distant hum. You wander down a narrow, cobblestone street, the flickering light of the market lanterns casting long, dancing shadows ahead of your boots. The air here is cooler, sheltered by the overhanging wooden balconies of the tall houses on either side. At the end of the lane, marked by a heavy, wrought-iron sign swaying gently in the evening breeze, is an old stone building. A warm, golden light spills out from its small, leaded glass windows, painting welcoming squares across the dark, uneven street. It is the town's oldest inn, a sturdy, sprawling structure that looks as though it has been sheltering weary travelers for centuries. You step up to the thick oak door, grab the iron ring, and pull it open. The heavy wood groans softly, a sound that promises warmth and absolute safety. You step over the threshold, and the contrast is immediate and wonderful. The cool, damp air of the evening is instantly replaced by a thick, enveloping wave of heat. The heavy door swings shut behind you with a solid, final thud, cutting off the lingering noise of the streets entirely. Inside, the tavern room is a masterpiece of rustic comfort. Low, heavy beams of dark timber stretch across the ceiling, blackened by decades of hearth smoke. In the center of the far wall, a massive stone fireplace roars with life. Thick logs of seasoned oak crackle and pop fiercely in the flames. Pop. Crack. The fire casts a deep, rich orange glow over the entire room, making the polished wooden tables and the worn leather chairs look incredibly inviting. The air is thick with a magnificent, heavy aroma. It smells of a rich, slow-cooked root vegetable stew, roasting mutton, spilled dark ale, the sharp tang of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, and the sweet, resinous scent of the burning oak. It is the ultimate smell of sanctuary. You let out a long, slow breath, feeling the tension of the road finally begin to melt away from your shoulders. A few locals sit scattered at the tables, speaking in low, hushed tones, their faces illuminated softly by the firelight. They offer you brief, respectful nods as you pass, recognizing the heavy boots and the worn woolen cloak of a long-distance wanderer. You make your way to the wooden counter at the back of the room. The innkeeper is a large, jovial man with a thick, graying beard and a heavy linen apron. He takes one look at the dust on your clothes and the tired slump of your shoulders and simply smiles. There is no need for long negotiations. He reaches under the counter and pulls out a heavy iron key attached to a block of smooth wood. He sets it on the bar with a sharp, metallic clink. Clink. He points a thick finger toward a narrow wooden staircase in the corner, his eyes crinkling with quiet understanding. You place a silver coin on the wood, nod your thanks, and pick up the cold iron key. The promise of a real bed is suddenly the only thing your mind can focus on. You climb the narrow wooden stairs, the ancient boards groaning rhythmically beneath your weight. Creak, creak. The sound is slow, tired, and perfectly matches the ache in your legs. You reach the second floor and walk down a dimly lit hallway, the floorboards slightly uneven beneath your boots. You find the heavy oak door that matches the number burned into your wooden keychain. You slide the iron key into the lock. It turns with a heavy, satisfying clunk. You push the door open and step inside. The room is small, incredibly simple, but absolutely perfect. A thick beeswax candle burns on a small bedside table, casting a soft, wavering light across the plaster walls. In the corner, there is a large porcelain basin filled with clean, steaming water and a folded linen towel. You walk over to it, unfastening your heavy cloak and letting it fall to the floor. You dip your hands into the water, splashing it over your dusty face, your neck, and your tired arms. The warmth soothes your wind-chapped skin instantly, washing away the fine golden dust of the plains and the sweat of the busy market. You take a moment to just stand there, eyes closed, feeling the water drip slowly from your chin into the basin. Drip, drip. You dry your face with the rough linen towel, feeling cleaner than you have in days. You move toward the center of the room. There, waiting for you, is a heavy wooden bed frame, holding a remarkably thick mattress stuffed with fresh goose down and dried lavender. You reach down and begin to unlace your heavy leather boots, sliding them off your tired feet one by one. The physical relief is absolute. You pull back the heavy woven wool blanket and the crisp, clean linen sheets. You climb into the bed, the mattress sinking deeply, perfectly contouring to the shape of your exhausted body. The sheets are cool against your skin at first, but they quickly capture your body heat, creating a perfect, protective cocoon. The faint, sweet smell of the dried lavender is incredibly soothing, rising from the soft pillows to calm your wandering mind. The noise of the world outside is completely gone. There is only the soft hiss of the dying candle and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. The great spire stands tall in the dark outside, waiting patiently for the dawn. But tonight, there is no more walking. There is only the deep, heavy warmth of the blankets. Your eyes flutter closed, and you sink down, 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 into a perfect, dreamless sleep. The transition from sleep to waking is a delicate, beautiful thing when you are entirely safe. You do not wake with a sudden start, nor do you open your eyes to the freezing bite of the wild wind. Instead, you are coaxed slowly from your deep, dreamless rest by the soft, muffled sounds of a town gently coming alive. The thick, goose-down mattress has held you perfectly all night, cradling your exhausted muscles in a warm, lavender-scented embrace. You keep your eyes closed for just a little longer, simply enjoying the sensation of absolute physical restoration. The heavy wool blankets press down on you with a comforting, protective weight. Outside your window, a single rooster crows in the distance, a long, clear note that signals the formal end of the night. You take a deep, slow breath, smelling the clean linen sheets and the faint, lingering scent of the melted beeswax candle on the bedside table. It is morning. You open your eyes to a room bathed in soft, pale light. The morning sun is filtering through the small leaded glass panes of your window, casting a warm golden grid across the worn wooden floorboards. Tiny dust motes dance lazily in the beams of light, drifting like microscopic floating stars. You push the heavy blankets aside and sit up on the edge of the bed. Your legs, which ached so deeply yesterday, feel remarkably strong and refreshed. The deep rest has worked its quiet magic. You stand up and walk over to the porcelain basin in the corner. You pick up the heavy clay pitcher beside it and pour a stream of fresh, cold water into the bowl. Splash! The sound is sharp and bright in the quiet room. You cup your hands, bringing the freezing water up to your face. The shock is immediate and exhilarating, washing away the last, lingering shadows of sleep. You reach for the rough linen towel, drying your skin briskly, feeling entirely awake and ready for whatever the day holds. You dress slowly, appreciating the simple comfort of your clothes. Your linen shirt, having aired out overnight, feels crisp and clean against your skin. You reach for your heavy leather boots, sitting patiently by the door. The leather is cool and stiff from the night air, but as you slide your feet inside and pull the thick laces tight, they immediately feel like an extension of your own body. You swing your traveler's bag over your shoulder. It feels significantly lighter after a night of deep rest. You open the heavy oak door of your room and step out into the hallway, the floorboards groaning softly under your weight. Creak. You make your way down the narrow wooden staircase. The tavern room below is completely transformed. The roaring fire of last night has been reduced to a gentle, glowing bed of embers. The loud, boisterous crowd is gone, replaced by a profound morning stillness. The air smells wonderfully of toasted oats, warm goat's milk, and sweet, melting butter. The jovial innkeeper from the night before is already awake, quietly wiping down the polished wooden tables with a damp cloth. He sees you descending the stairs and offers a silent, knowing smile. He gestures toward a small table near the embers, and you sit down, the wood warm against your back. A moment later, he places a heavy, carved wooden bowl in front of you. It is filled with a thick, steaming porridge, sweetened with dark mountain honey, and topped with a handful of dried berries. He sets a carved wooden spoon beside it with a soft clack. You wrap your hands around the warm bowl, letting the heat seep into your palms. You take a bite. The porridge is incredibly rich and filling, the sweet honey melting perfectly with the hearty oats. The wooden spoon scrapes gently against the bottom of the bowl. Scrape. Clink. It is a slow, methodical breakfast, eaten in comfortable silence. Every spoonful is pure, grounding energy, preparing your body for the miles ahead. You finish the meal, leaving a silver coin on the table, and offer the innkeeper a deep nod of gratitude. You push the heavy tavern door open and step out into the crisp morning air. The cobblestone streets are damp with early dew, glistening beautifully in the rising sun. The town is fully awake now, but the chaotic, frenetic energy of the twilight market has been replaced by the steady, rhythmic hum of daily labor. Merchants are sweeping the stones in front of their stalls. Swish, swish. A blacksmith's hammer rings out in the distance, a clear, sharp tone that echoes off the stone walls. Clang. You walk through the winding streets, guided by the gentle slope of the land, making your way toward the massive eastern gates of the town. As you pass through the towering stone archway, you leave the protective shadow of the walls behind and step back out into the open world. You stop dead in your tracks, your breath catching in your throat. There, rising from the vast, open plains, impossibly huge and overwhelmingly real, is the Great Spire. It is no longer a distant silhouette or a trick of the horizon. It is a colossal, heaven-piercing monolith of smooth, pale stone, catching the brilliant morning light and glowing like a beacon. The shadow it casts stretches for miles across the golden fields. You are standing at the very threshold of your destination. The journey is almost over, but the final steps are always the heaviest. You adjust the strap of your bag, fix your eyes on the massive structure, and begin to walk. The heavy wooden gates of the town close behind you with a distant, muffled thud. You are back on the open road, but the feeling of the journey has fundamentally changed. The endless, wandering freedom of the wild plains has been replaced by a singular, unavoidable magnetic pull. The Great Spire stands directly ahead, anchoring the very edge of the world. It is so massive that it plays tricks on your perception. You walk for an hour, the rhythmic crunch of your boots steady and purposeful on the packed dirt. Crunch, crunch. Yet, the spire does not seem to grow any larger. It simply looms, a permanent fixture in the sky, daring you to cross the final expanse of the golden fields. The sun climbs higher, warming the linen of your shirt, but a cool, persistent breeze blows constantly from the east, carrying the faint metallic scent of ancient, undisturbed stone. As the morning bleeds into the long, slow hours of the afternoon, the landscape finally begins to yield to the structure. The tall, swaying wheat of the plains slowly thins out, giving way to a vast, perfectly flat expanse of pale, crushed gravel. You step off the soft dirt and onto the stones. The sound of your footsteps changes instantly, becoming a sharp, granular shifting. SSJ, crack. The gravel is remarkably uniform, deliberately laid down centuries ago to create a massive, barren halo around the base of the spire. Nothing grows here. There are no insects humming in the grass, no hawks circling overhead. There is only the immense, crushing silence of the monolith, broken only by the sound of your own breathing and the steady, rhythmic grinding of the stones beneath your leather boots. You are crossing a no-man's land, a sacred threshold between the living world and the ancient mystery ahead. You cross into the shadow of the Great Spire. The transition from the bright, baking sun of the plains into the cool, deep shade is instantaneous. The temperature drops noticeably, raising goosebumps on your bare arms. You stop and tilt your head back, looking up the side of the structure. It is a dizzying, humbling sight. The smooth, pale stone rises up, perfectly straight and unbroken, piercing the clouds and disappearing into the thin blue atmosphere above. It is so impossibly tall that you literally cannot see the top. You feel a sudden, strange sense of vertigo, not from looking down, but from looking up. The sheer weight of the architecture pressing down on the earth is palpable. It makes you feel smaller than a grain of sand, yet incredibly privileged to be standing in its presence. The wind howls softly as it wraps around the colossal curves of the stone, a low, continuous moan that vibrates deep in your chest. Ooh. You take the final, deliberate steps toward the very base of the spire. The crushed gravel ends, meeting a perfectly fitted pavement of dark, polished basalt. You walk across the smooth black stone until you are standing mere inches from the pale wall of the monolith. You slowly reach out your hand, your fingers trembling slightly with exhaustion and awe. You look at your own hand, rough, scarred, and covered in the dust of 100 miles, and you press your open palm flat against the ancient surface. The stone is incredibly cold, holding a deep, subterranean chill that ignores the heat of the summer sun. It is also impossibly smooth. There are no chisel marks, no seams of mortar, no rough edges. It feels like polished glass or frozen bone. You slide your hand down the surface, feeling a faint, almost imperceptible hum vibrating through the rock. It is not a dead ruin. It feels alive, holding the dormant energy of whatever forgotten empire raised it into the sky. You close your eyes, leaning your forehead against the cool stone, letting out a long, shuddering sigh of pure relief. You turn your head, keeping your cheek pressed against the smooth wall, and look down the curve of the massive base. A few hundred yards away, breaking the perfect, seamless expanse of the pale stone, is an opening. It is a massive archway, utterly black and completely empty, towering 50 feet into the air. There are no heavy iron doors to push, no guards to question you, no warnings carved into the rock. It is simply an invitation, waiting patiently for anyone brave enough or weary enough to walk inside. You push yourself away from the wall, the sudden separation from the cold stone feeling almost like a physical loss. You adjust the heavy strap of your traveler's bag one last time. It has carried your bread, your salt, and your survival across mountains, forests, and plains. Now, it will carry you into the dark. You turn your boots toward the great archway, your footsteps echoing sharply against the sheer wall of the spire. Clack, clack. The long road is finally behind you. The ascent is about to begin. You stand before the colossal archway, the final entrance to the great spire. The sheer scale of the opening is entirely incomprehensible to the human eye. It is a doorway built not for men, but for gods, or perhaps for the sky itself to walk through. The bright, baking light of the late afternoon sun stops exactly at the threshold, refusing to penetrate the absolute heavy blackness within. It is as if the archway is actively swallowing the light, holding a wall of shadow at bay. You take a slow, deep breath, filling your lungs with the thin, cool air that rolls out from the belly of the monolith. It does not smell like the world outside. There is no comforting scent of crushed grass, damp earth, or roasting meat from a bustling town market. It smells of deep, undisturbed time. It is a dry, metallic, mineral purity that has not seen the cleansing rain or the warmth of the sun in 1,000 lifetimes. You adjust the heavy strap of your traveler's bag, feeling the familiar, reassuring weight of your remaining bread and water pressing against your hip. The golden fields, the roaring rivers, the singing forests. They are all behind you now. You step forward, crossing the invisible boundary between the living earth and the silent stone. The change is instantaneous and completely overwhelming. The moment both of your heavy leather boots cross the threshold, the constant howling wind of the open plains is cut off entirely. The world outside is silenced in a fraction of a second, as if a heavy velvet curtain has been dropped behind you. The air inside is remarkably cool, settling against your warm skin with a still, heavy pressure that makes you acutely aware of your own heartbeat. Thump, thump. You take another step into the dark. Clack. The sound of your boots striking the smooth, polished floor explodes into the vast emptiness. It does not simply fade away. It travels. You stand frozen, mesmerized, as the sharp echo bounces off unseen walls, rolling upward into the unimaginable heights of the spire, decaying into a low, rumbling whisper that lasts for what feels like an eternity. Clack. Whoosh. You are standing inside a cavern so impossibly vast that it creates its own weather, its own atmosphere, its own profound acoustic reality. Every single breath you take is amplified, becoming a soft, rhythmic tide in an ocean of perfect silence. The slight rustle of your woolen cloak sounds like a distant wave breaking on a rocky shore. You stop moving entirely, allowing your tired eyes the long, slow minutes they need to adjust to the profound gloom. The absolute blackness slowly begins to give way to a very faint, deeply strange illumination. It is not sunlight leaking from the massive door behind you, nor is it the warm, flickering orange of a torch or a hearthfire. It is a pale, ghostly luminescence emanating directly from the towering walls themselves, casting a cool, silver-blue glow across the unimaginably vast floor. You look down at your feet. You're not standing on rough paving stones, gravel, or packed dirt. The floor is a single, continuous sheet of something that looks exactly like polished obsidian, as smooth and reflective as a midnight lake, frozen in time. It mirrors the faint blue light from the walls, making it feel as though you are standing directly on the surface of deep, still water, suspended in an infinite void. You take another cautious step, half expecting your heavy boot to break the surface and sink, but the floor is incredibly solid, returning another sharp, rolling echo into the dark. Clack. As your vision stretches further into the massive, echoing hall, the true purpose and the staggering ambition of the spire begins to reveal itself. Far ahead, rising gracefully from the center of the polished black floor, is the beginning of the ascent. It is not a simple wooden ladder, nor is it a narrow flight of stone stairs. It is a sweeping, monumental ramp of pale, glowing stone, spiraling upward and hugging the inner curve of the colossal outer wall. It is wide enough to march an entire legion of men shoulder to shoulder, curving gracefully out of sight into the glowing silver-blue mist high above. The sheer, overwhelming scale of the architecture is paralyzing. Whoever built this structure did not simply want to reach the sky. They wanted to conquer it, step by deliberate, engineered step. You walk slowly toward the base of the great ramp, your footsteps setting a slow, deliberate rhythm that fills the empty hall, pushing back the silence. Clack. Clack. You reach the very bottom of the pale stone incline. You reach out, running your bare fingertips along the smooth, waist-high balustrade that guards the outer edge of the ramp. The stone is incredibly cold, sending a sharp, waking thrill all the way up your arm. You turn around, looking back over your shoulder one last time. The massive archway through which you entered looks incredibly small now. A tiny, glowing rectangle of golden afternoon light holding the world you know. It is beautiful, and it is warm, but it is no longer your path. You turn your face back toward the long, spiraling ascent, looking up into the glowing, echoing, infinite heights of the great spire. You take a deep, steadying breath, gripping your smooth wooden staff tightly in your hand. You place your right boot onto the first smooth stone of the incline. The long walk is over. The climb has begun. You place your right boot onto the first smooth stone of the incline, and the journey takes on a completely new dimension. The horizontal world of roads, rivers, and plains is gone, replaced by a singular, vertical ambition. The ramp is wide, built with a grace that defies the staggering weight of the stone. It curves gently along the inner skin of the spire, rising at an angle so perfect it feels as though the floor is rising to meet your feet rather than you climbing against gravity. Your wooden staff strikes the pale stone with a rhythmic, hollow sound. Tap, clack, tap, clack. Each strike sends a ripple of sound out into the vast, echoing void of the central shaft. The echoes do not simply bounce. They climb, dancing upward into the silver-blue luminescence of the heights until they are lost in the infinite distance. You are no longer walking through a landscape. You're walking through an instrument of pure geometry. As you move higher, the colossal archway you entered begins to shrink. You stop after a few hundred steps and look back over the low stone balustrade. The opening to the outside world is now just a tiny glowing sliver of golden light, a distant memory of the afternoon sun. Below you, the floor of polished obsidian looks like a perfectly still black lake. The faint blue glow from the walls reflects off its surface, creating the illusion that the spire continues downward into the very heart of the earth. The silence here is absolute, yet it is not empty. It is a heavy, pressurized silence that seems to hum against your eardrums. Every rustle of your woolen cloak, every intake of breath, and every beat of your heart is amplified, becoming the only life in a temple of dead, magnificent stone. You are a solitary heartbeat in a body of silent mountain. The walls beside you are a marvel of ancient craftsmanship. As you walk, you run your bare hand along the smooth, cool surface. You notice that the stone is not entirely plain. It is covered in a dense, intricate network of geometric carvings. There are no scenes of war, no faces of kings, and no written words. Instead, there are interlocking circles, perfectly straight lines, and complex star patterns that seem to shift and pulse in the pale, ghostly light. The carvings are deep and sharp, as if they were cut yesterday rather than thousands of years ago. You trace the lines with your fingertips, feeling the slight, vibrating energy that seems to flow through the rock itself. This structure was not built for shelter or defense. It was built as a bridge, a mathematical ladder designed to connect the mud of the earth with the fire of the stars. You find yourself matching your breathing to the rhythm of the patterns on the wall, your footsteps becoming part of the spire's ancient, frozen melody. The air begins to change as you reach the higher levels of the first great hall. It is no longer the still, heavy air of the ground floor. It is thinner, sharper, and carries a strange, ozone-like scent, as if a thunderstorm is eternally brewing just out of reach. A very faint, high-pitched whistle begins to weave through the silence. The sound of the high-altitude wind vibrating through hidden vents in the outer stone. It is a lonely, beautiful sound that reminds you how far you have climbed. Your muscles begin to feel the steady, cumulative burn of the ascent. The physical effort is constant, but it is not exhausting. There is a strange, intoxicating energy in this place that seems to feed your spirit even as it tests your body. You shift your bag, feeling the remaining weight of your supplies, and continue the spiral. Left foot, right foot, tap, clack. The repetition becomes a form of prayer, a meditation of movement that clears your mind of everything but the next step. You reach a wide, semicircular landing that juts out over the central void like a stone tongue. You walk to the edge and lean your forearms against the cool balustrade. You are now hundreds of feet above the obsidian floor. The tiny rectangle of the door has vanished entirely, leaving you suspended in a world of silver blue light and shifting shadows. You look up. The ramp continues its endless, graceful spiral, disappearing into a brilliant, glowing mist far above. There is no sign of the top, no end to the stone, and no sound from the world you left behind. You are between worlds now, neither of the earth nor yet of the sky. You take a sip of water from your flask, the liquid cold and clean, and let out a long, slow breath. The great spire has claimed you. You belong to the ascent now. You turn back to the ramp, your boots finding the familiar stone, and begin to climb once more into the glowing dark. The endless, rhythmic spiral of the ramp finally yields to a wide, majestic opening. You step off the incline and find yourself standing at the threshold of the ultimate chamber, the very heart of the great spire's summit. This is the Chamber of Stars. Your first step onto the floor produces a sound that is entirely different from the sharp, echoing clacks of the lower levels. Here, the stone is not the polished, mirror-like obsidian of the entrance, but a soft, pale grey marble that has been honed to a matte finish. It feels warmer beneath your boots, almost inviting. The ceiling above is not a dome of stone, but a vast, transparent canopy of ancient, reinforced glass, revealing the infinite blackness of the night sky. The silver-blue luminescence of the walls is gone, replaced by the natural, shimmering light of a billion distant suns. You stop, resting your wooden staff against the stone for the final time, and simply listen. The journey of the miles is over. You have reached the roof of the world. The acoustics of this high chamber are unlike anything you've experienced on the road. In a space this large, you would expect a thunderous rolling echo, but the geometry of the spire does something far more subtle. As the high-altitude wind whistles through the outer carvings of the monolith, the sound is caught and spun around the circular perimeter, transforming into a low, continuous murmur. It sounds like 1,000 people speaking at once in hushed, reverent tones, just out of reach of your understanding. You walk toward the center of the hall, and the effect intensifies. Every shift of your woolen cloak, every soft intake of breath, and every muffled footstep is picked up by the stone and carried in a swirling loop around the room. You stop and whisper a quiet thank you into the dark. The sound travels away from you, sliding along the curve of the wall, and returns to your ear a few seconds later from behind your shoulder, as clear and soft as a gentle breath. It is a haunting, beautiful experience that makes you feel as though you're part of a conversation with the universe itself. You walk toward the outer wall of the chamber, where the view of the world below is most clear. Between the glowing pillars of stone, the windows offer a perspective that is almost too vast for the human mind to grasp. You look down, far beyond the base of the spire. The golden fields you crossed are now just a dark, velvety shadow. The great stone bridge is a tiny silver needle across a thread of water. Even the bustling town where you found the innkeeper's warmth is nothing more than a faint, flickering cluster of orange lights, like a handful of embers scattered on a black cloth. You think of the Roman legions, the medieval merchants, and the silent shepherds you encountered along the way. From up here, their struggles, their triumphs, and their long histories are all part of the same quiet, breathing landscape. The spire has granted you the eyes of history, allowing you to see the world not as a series of obstacles, but as a single, beautiful story. The physical fatigue of the entire journey begins to pull at your muscles now, but it is no longer a burden. It is a badge of honor. Your legs have carried you through the hollow roads, across the freezing rivers, up the high passes, and through the whispering forests. In the center of the chamber, directly beneath the open view of the stars, is a large, circular dais covered in thick, woven tapestries and soft, ancient furs. It is a place designed for a traveler's final rest. You walk over and sit down, the soft fabric feeling incredibly luxurious against your tired frame. You slide the heavy strap of your bag from your shoulder and set it on the floor with a slow, padded thud. You reach inside and pull out the last of your water. The liquid is cold, tasting of the journey's beginning. You take a slow, deliberate drink, feeling the coolness spread through your chest. The murmuring whispers of the spire continue to swirl around you, a soothing white noise that begins to blur the edges of your thoughts. You lean back against the soft furs, looking up through the transparent ceiling. The stars above are so bright and so close that you feel as though you could reach out and pluck them from the sky like glowing fruit. You think about the ancient architects who raised these stones, their hands long since turned to dust, yet their vision still sheltering you tonight. You feel a profound connection to everyone who has ever sought a high place to watch the stars. You are no longer a solitary wanderer, lost in a vast world. You are a part of the spire, a part of the mountain, and a part of the night. The tension leaves your jaw, your shoulders drop, and your breathing slows down to match the steady, rhythmic pulse of the starlight. The weight of the world is gone, replaced by a light, drifting peace that settles over you like a heavy blanket. The fire of the journey is fading now, reduced to a bed of glowing internal embers. The great spire has done its work. It has guided you, tested you, and finally, it has brought you home to the silence. You close your eyes, the murmuring whispers of the hall becoming a distant, indistinct lullaby. The darkness is not empty. It is full of the stories you have gathered on the road. The scent of lavender from the inn, the sound of the shepherd's bell, and the cold spray of the river. They all blend together into a single, perfect memory. You are safe. You are warm. You are finished. As the stars wheel slowly above the great stone monolith, you sink down, 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 into the deepest, most restful sleep of your life. Good night, traveler. Your journey is complete.